Today's lesson is topic 13, lesson 7, decimal place value. The objective for today is I will use decimal models and place value charts to show different ways of reading and writing decimals. The problem is, Joe is competing in a game show. Every time he answers a question correctly, a light bulb lights up. This is what the board looks like at the end of the show. How could you describe Joe's score? We've been working with decimals and fractions in this unit so far. I'm looking at this box, and in order to find out how many total little boxes I have available, I need to count how many are on the top, how many are on the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have a 10. It looks like a square, but let me double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it is a 10 by 10, which you know, because you know your math facts, that this is a hundredths block. Okay, so there are 100 little squares available to us. I need to determine how many total are colored in. So I count all the way across at how many total bars are shaded, because I know that in each bar I'll have 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 3. So there are 83 of them colored in. Because of what we've learned so far with fractions, we know that the total number is my denominator, and the part that's shaded is what is my numerator. So one way to describe Joe's score would be 83. Today we're going to talk about how we can use this and also make it a decimal, but also double check our decimal place value. So 83 hundredths could be written as 0 and 83 hundredths, which is said in word form the same way as the decimal. Again, you see it is word form right here as a decimal and as a fraction. 83 out of 100 would give me this written as an actual fraction. The first question I have for you is, if the grid represents one whole, what does one column represent? If each column is a part of my hundreds, we know that each one there are 10 in 100. So the 1/10 would be what one column would represent. So the next question is, what is the value of 8 columns? Remember, for value, I actually put my 8 in the right place value. I have 8 tens that are full. If I have 8 tens, that gives me 80 tenths or 8 tens. So 80 hundredths. If I'm doing each individual one, or if I'm going by column, I would refer to it as 8 tenths for number 2. What is the value of the 3 squares in the 9th column? These are 3 small squares colored in out of 100. So this would be considered 3 hundredths. Or as a fraction would be 3 over 100. How many squares are shaded in all? We know that there are 8 total full. So I have 83 total for number 4. I want you to use the place value chart in the grid that you've glued down in your note to show 67 hundredths, both shaded and written out in the chart. To start, to show 67 hundredths on my chart, you need to color in 6 tens, because this is in the tens place, and 7 hundredths. I am looking at a decimal, so remember that this 1, or the 0, is in the ones place, talking about my whole number. 0 goes there. The decimal is considered and, we read it as and. 6 goes in the tens place, and 7 in the hundredths. So it's 67 hundredths. I have to color in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths to take care of that. And then there's 7 on the next one. So I've now colored in 67 out of the total of 100. So as a fraction, I have the same thing, 67 over 100. You should have this filled in your notes. Also, to talk about how we would write our numbers as decimals in expanded and word form. We know that we read our decimals and our fractions the same way, so written out in word form, they would be written out the same way. So I have 3 and 91 hundredths. So as word form, I write it exactly like I say it. This takes you all the way back to one of our very first units on place value. We read it in a word form. The way we read it is exactly the way that we write it. So 3 and 91 hundredths. Remembering that and is what we say for our decimal. For expanded form, you need to separate out each place value. You can use your place value chart to help you separate out each number. The 3 is in the ones, so I have to put that one first. My 9 is in the tenths place, so I have to write that as a decimal. But the next one is where it can get tricky sometimes. I have a 1 in the hundredths place. I cannot just put 0.1 because that would actually be 1/10. I'm referring to 100th. Okay, so the last one has to be 0 in the tenths place and putting that 1 in the hundredths place value. It is very important to make sure all of your numbers are actually in the place value that they are in the original problem when you go to actually make them in expanded form. I want you in your notes to do these next two problems on your own in both word form and expanded form. Let's do 13 and 62 hundredths and 17 and 2 tenths. Both of those two problems in your notes, ready to show tomorrow.